Hi, everyone. So glad you could join us again for the Grief Healing Telesummit. It's our honor to have you here with us. I'm Chelsea Hansen, your host, founder of With Sympathy Gifts and Keepsakes, as well as Global Grace, which is the World Association of Spiritual Grief Healing. We have a very special guest for you tonight, Trish Poole. Trish is just a jack of all trades. She has so much valuable information to share with us tonight. But let me tell you a little bit about her background. Trish has over 17 years of experience in healing others through a lot of different modalities, including Reiki, EFT, reconnective healing, quantum healing, hypnotherapy technique, as well as her intuitive consultations. And one of her motivations in learning all that she could about the other side was her father's death when she was only 13 years old. Trish has helped thousands of people connect with their loved ones who crossed over and to recognize their signs from their loved ones. And Trish encourages us to remember that as deep as our sorrow goes, that is as high as our joy can go. And Trish, in fact, was very instrumental in my healing from grief as well. So welcome, Trish.
Thanks, Chelsea. Thanks for having me here, and it's an honor to be a part of your telesummit.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you. And can you tell us a little, for people who aren't already familiar with you, more about how you got started in your line of work?
Yeah, well, there are a couple events that led me down this road that I didn't really see when I was younger, how it was all coming together. When I was 4, I got hit by a car and knocked unconscious. And after that, I was just a little bit different. And then when my dad died when I was 13, I didn't really talk about it with too many people because I wasn't really getting an answer that made me feel like it was the answer. But I did research a lot. And I just kept asking, what's it really all about? Because it didn't make sense to me that we'd all have to go through such a painful experience as death, death of somebody we love, and that whole complicated situation. As I explored that throughout my life, it's really true, knock and the door will be opened, ask and you will receive. And I would get answers to that question as I went through my life and through life experience. I ended up being in international business, and at that time I was studying meditation and some other things and started to have some phenomenal spiritual experiences that led me to leave corporate work and do this work that I do now, which is to help other people simply stay on their spiritual path and accomplish what they feel is most important in their life.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I should tell everyone just quickly my story of how I met you, because like I said, it was super instrumental in my grief healing and the work that I do now. So I don't know if you know what a huge impact you have had on me. I think you do, though. But so what happened in my case was my mom had passed away when I was 28. And when I was 38, about 10 years later, I was giving birth to my son, my first child, and I was terrified, and I was due very soon, and I saw an article in the newspaper about hypnobirthing or in a magazine, so I thought, I'll visit this practitioner. So I visited Trish just for one session, and we went through hypnobirthing, some of the principles. She gave me a book to take home. Unfortunately, the next day, I did go into labor, so very quickly, so a little sooner than I expected. But I think the reason I met Trish at that time was, here I'm having a child, both of my parents are deceased, and that's a major life event you're having to welcome a new child into your family. So then after I had my baby, I went back to Trish, and I think Trish was helping me with some other work, and then she also had a service called angel therapy, and I really didn't know what it was, but I was, open to it. I'm like, oh, this sounds interesting, whatever, So much to my surprise, and I'm sure I was divinely guided to Trish for this, was she was able to open the connection for me that, wow, my parents really still are alive. Their spirit's alive. Their soul's alive. They're up in heaven. So she opened this whole world to me, and it had such a profound effect on me healing that I could continue this dialogue with them. They didn't have to be totally out of my life and have no connection. And I was totally unfamiliar with this concept previously, but it was the biggest, like I said, healing thing that I had. So that's why I'm so passionate with our association of spiritual grief healing, because for me, this was like the secret. Wow, I really felt better after 10 years of, recovering from grief, but still having that sadness. So that's why I'm so excited for Trish to open this idea, this possibility up to us about that we really do have spiritual connection with our loved ones. So yeah, if you want to tell the people or the audience a little bit about how that works, that would be awesome.
Okay, sure. Yeah, that was kind of a surprise when we met and I started talking about your mom, and I remember the look on your face. You were pretty surprised, but happy too, So I have a background where my grandfather died when my dad was 4. So in our family, we've always prayed for the people who've passed, and it always seemed a little bit like you could have them around. And then when my dad passed, I feel like he was helping me through a lot of different things when I was around 13. I just seemed to know things that a 13-year-old really shouldn't. and I seem to be able to escape some situations that, because I sort of would go looking for trouble in a certain way, and somehow I would always end up escaping those situations. And I feel like that was my dad helping me through those different things and understanding and leading me to different people who could help me have deeper understandings about life and spirit and how that goes. And as I researched it, I started to find that many ancient traditions, the Celtic tradition, Mexican tradition, Hawaiian, pretty much any ancient tradition, has some sort of connecting with their loved ones who've passed and honoring their ancestors. And so it becomes kind of just a natural thing from their point of view. And I don't know how we lost that along the way, where we were to never connect with our loved ones for some reason. But it's more natural than unnatural. And so it makes more sense to just allow it and let it be, since our soul continues and the love is eternal. I don't know if that is kind of what you were looking for.
Oh yeah, and tell us how do you think we can recognize and receive signs from our loved ones? Maybe a person who maybe had a little inkling, wow, that reminds me of my person who passed away, whether they see a cardinal or a butterfly, or how do you know these signs are real, for the skeptic, let's say, or how do you introduce yourself to be open to this?
Sure. Well, I really recommend always having some sort of connection with Source or Creator or God. That really helps you stay the course that's best for your soul and keep your energy high. And then, you can just put it out to Spirit. So you can send your prayer to Creator and say, Creator, please have my loved one send me signs. Or you can ask your loved one to send you signs, and if it's appropriate, they can. The signs come in lots of different ways, and I guess some of the really interesting ones that I personally experienced, and I feel more comfortable talking about my personal experiences
sure.
Because, just to protect the confidentiality of my clients. For example, one time, the silliest thing, I kept getting this feeling to go shopping at a grocery store that I don't normally go to. It's kind of out of the way. It's just not my favorite grocery store. And I know, it was so weird. And it was kind of overwhelming. So finally I thought, I know what's happened when I haven't listened to that little voice. So I thought, okay, fine. I'm going to go to that grocery store, and I don't know why I'm going there, but I'm sure it'll be fine. And if nothing else, I'll just get the groceries I need, and that'll be that. And so I went to the grocery store, and I ended up running into somebody who'd been really wanting to see me, somebody from my past. And we had a really deep connection. It was an ex-boyfriend, and he was going through a little bit of a hard time. So he wasn't going to reach out by phone, of course, but I had been on his mind, and it ended up being a really good thing for both of us. Now, I haven't seen him before or since, and it's been several years. We live in the same town, we live in the same neighborhood, but we never really see each other. So it was one of those times when Spirit took it upon itself to bring signs not just to my ex-boyfriend, which was ex-boyfriend. You know, you've been wanting to feel loved and cared for, and you are. And at the same time was able to give me a sign like, see, listen to your inner voice, listen to the help you're getting from Spirit, and you're going to be able to connect with what you're meant to connect with today for this moment. And sometimes it's fun to be of service to others because you also receive back. Sometimes I know I've had clients tell me that they've been standing in a cashier line at a store, not really expecting any sort of sign or indication of anything. And maybe the person in front of them or behind them, I can't remember which it was, but somebody right next to them in line turned to them, total stranger, and said an expression that that person's grandmother always said.
Oh, sure.
And the person who spoke it had no idea that they had just basically channeled grandma for the person who was standing in line. So those are signs that we get through people. A lot of times we can get those messages through people. Also, like you had mentioned, cardinals or other signs from nature, finding feathers. Those are really common signs. And there's a certain feeling that comes with it, kind of a knowing. Some people describe it as a warming sensation or goosebumps or just a happy, like, oh, kind of as if they had gotten a quick phone call from their loved one. So I know another person who always finds pennies, and her loved one always talked about pennies from heaven.
Oh, yeah, that's neat.
That's kind of funny to me.
And for me personally, the way I get little signs are like license plates, billboards, and I think it's just because when I'm driving, you're in that more relaxed state, so you're more open to the signs and that kind of stuff. So I almost like when I know I'm going somewhere on a longer drive because I think, ooh, what will happen? Or, it's just a way of connection, so I like that as well.
Oh, yeah, those are absolutely valid. Yep, when you put it out there that you're willing to receive signs, they bring them through. And then there are times where they'll just randomly do it when you're not even asking. And then there are times where, sorry, yep.
Yeah, it's funny that I like the random ones because it is like, oh wow, what a neat surprise.
Absolutely. Fun. Yep. And then there are times when, we might be going through an emotional thing and we're really wishing our loved one was there with us. And we're like, oh, I wish I could get an answer from you or feel you or, something like that. And it could be that night the person feels the loved one in the bedroom, because when we're asleep, it's a time where it's really easy for Spirit to connect with us, especially between 2 and 4. That's the visiting hours. That's when the veil is the thinnest. And when we're really emotional like that, they may not be able to come that moment when we're in the deep emotional throes of upset, but they can oftentimes come shortly after that and give us a sign, just to know that, they've got our back and they believe in us.
Yeah, that is so comforting, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And to go through life thinking that, they don't care, they aren't aware, or have no mercy for us as we're down here. They're in heaven, right? Having a good time. And we're left behind, kind of like suffering, missing them, longing for them. And we wonder, what they're doing and are they okay, and do they long for us? And oftentimes they just aren't suffering the same way we are here back on the planet. And it's nice to know they can, remind us, they love us and they've got our back and they're doing good, but, they still see what we're up to and check in, and every once in a while can give us some advice.
Yeah, and that's such a common question people have when they lose someone, like, is my loved one okay? How do I know they're okay? So I think if you're open to signs, that might be a way of reaffirming, yeah, they are okay, they do love me. And what happens, like, because it's probably a new concept to a lot of people, I'm thinking on the phone or listening in, what if they feel like they haven't had a sign from their loved one? What are your thoughts there?
Well, sometimes there's a number of different things that can happen, right? Because we're all unique, and so every person's experience is going to be unique. And I don't mean just the person on the planet wondering, why haven't I had a sign? But I mean also the person who's passed is unique, and so it's an infinite amount of possibilities of what could have happened. Generally, rule of thumb, sometimes people go into what you could think of as convalescing. Maybe they're really tired and their spirit needs some time to just kind of convalesce and sort of heal, and then they'll be back to their normal self. Sometimes we have a hard time receiving the signs because we're so upset.
Yeah.
And, there are a lot of, as we all know, there are a lot of emotions that come when someone we love dies. So sometimes it's like our phone is jammed. Our phone to the spirit world, or our ability to get messages, it's like all the signals get jammed. And then it's difficult to get those signs. And what I usually recommend for my clients who talk with me about that, one of the things I recommend is that they just ask for healing of whatever it is that's coming between them and getting messages, getting signs.
Oh, okay.
The other thing is evaluate if they're relying too much on getting a sign.
Okay.
And that, like, that's not a black or white sort of thing. But if we rely too heavily on getting a sign, then sometimes they'll pull back so that we learn to stand on our own 2 feet, because that's really what it's all about. And they want us to live usually. They just want us to have a great life, have a good time, and really, get the juice out of the peach of life. Mm-hmm. So if we get too reliant on them, oftentimes they'll pull back. And things will be less. Yeah. Which is a little bit of a catch-22.
I know, too, like, for example, when my mom passed away, probably maybe I would say the first 2 years I was in a pretty heavy fog. So I don't really remember any signs coming through. But I would say after the 2-year mark, I do remember some stuff coming through, like, oh, that seems like that could be my mom. But I didn't maybe believe that it was, because I didn't know about that this connection really could be real. So I'm trying to say is, in my experience, I did have that that big fog around me, because I had that upset, a lot of emotions. So signs wouldn't even have gotten through, I don't think, are very little, but later I can remember, oh, wow, like I say, after the 2-year mark. At least that was my experience. And
Mm-hmm.
then, do you think the person who passes away, they might be like their soul, let's say, could be in shock? Let's pretend that, oh my God, I'm actually dead. So I don't want to get too way out there, but that's why they need that time to heal, and they're tired and convalesce, let's say.
Yeah, well, everybody's experience is infinitely unique. So, yeah,
Oh,
that's
sure.
fairly possible. I've encountered situations where people have passed and come back right away. So, come back and had another lifetime.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's not common, but it does happen.
And then I know sometimes people, too, will be like, oh, I don't want to bother anyone. How would you address that question? Like, is it okay to really bother the people up in heaven when I want to talk to them?
Oh, yeah. So just like in your relationships with people who are in the physical world, you don't call them up every 5 minutes and ask them a question, right? And you don't talk to them nonstop in your head. So
Sure.
you kind of want to, so you just kind of want to do the same thing with our loved ones who've crossed, is talk to them just from time to time, just like we would normally in the physical world. And, if you're quote unquote bothering them, it would be more about usually it's more about becoming too dependent on them. And then,
okay.
Yeah, and then what they do is they simply pull back their energy.
Okay.
So that we learn to not be so dependent. I don't know the quote exactly from the Bible, but there's something about leave the dead to take care of the dead or something like that. And so that's kind of what that means. Like, you can't be thinking always about the dead because you're here living. So
Sure.
So it's a little bit of a dance, right?
Mm-hmm.
But reaching out to them from time to time, just like you would if they were on the physical plane, is fine, normal, healthy. Ancient traditions always did that. And
Sure.
I know one of the Native American tribes I'm familiar with, they actually create a spirit plate every time they have a big celebration. So what they do is they take a plate and they go through all the different foods and take the best cuts and put it on that plate and set it aside. Mm-hmm.
That's
and they
neat.
and they set it aside, and it represents a plate for all the spirits, all the ancestors related to that family who passed.
And that's kind of like something we could do ourselves, like someone's birthday, put that piece of birthday cake in the special spot where your loved one used to sit, or, something like that, make it a little more modern to fit with your family today to carry on, just a way to honor the people who passed away. And I know one thing, too, that Trish helped me with was understanding that we do have past lives, and I think that helps with the grief healing process, because once you learn that your soul is eternal, that to me was almost like evidence, if you want to use that strong of a word, that, wow, this really happens. So maybe you could tell our listeners a little bit about past life regression, or does reincarnation really happen?
Sure, and here again we're going with ancient traditions that reincarnation is typical. It was just part of the expectation, and there's different interpretations of how people would be reincarnated and how they would bring back information from their past lives. The book that I read that really helped me kind of put it in perspective is a book it's titled Edgar Cayce, Cayce, on Reincarnation by Noel Langley, Langley, and I found it at the library once. And it has some really good information. In the first half, it talks about Edgar Cayce, who was a seer back in the 30s, and he would get information to help people heal. But he also would get information about past lives, and the information he'd get about the past lives would also help in healing, because we can have some of the same relationships.
Oh, uh-huh.
A lot of times we'll reincarnate with the same souls, or we might change relationships. And then the second half of that book, they talk about how during the Byzantine Empire, Constantine called the Nicaea Council, and he dictated that reincarnation be removed from the Christian doctrine. So from that time forward, sorry about that. Yeah. So from that time forward, it just takes a few generations, and then that whole belief system changes, right?
Yeah, that's too bad. It'd save us a lot of suffering maybe later, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, well, it worked well for his political purposes, but it did make it very difficult for all of us because we think we just have this one chance, and so one bad decision, and we feel like we're done for, right? But it's always a growing towards love and light and understanding of love and light, and with reincarnation, it's an affirmation of the soul continuing on. There are many stories now, people's experiences, especially with children who recall past lives. And there's one that I found on YouTube. They had him on some TV news shows. A young boy who remembered his experience as a World War II fighter and getting shot down.
Mm-hmm.
His parents actually arranged for him to meet up with pilots from that battalion that were still living.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. He recognized them, and and he knew details about them that, really no little child could possibly have known, even if he was coached, you know what I'm saying? So,
sure.
But I think you can find those on YouTube, and I'm not sure if I have links to those on my website, but certainly you can find them on YouTube, and there's some reincarnation information on my website.
And what is the address of your website, Trish?
www.patricia, M as in Mary, Poole, POOLE.com.
And then also on Trish's site, she does have resources for some of the books she's mentioning, because I recall seeing some of those. And, for the young boy that you're talking about, the World War II fighter, is this the same case where they actually have the book they wrote about the boy, or is this even another case of it? Because I know there's a book about a little boy who was who died in war.
It could be the same one. I'm not sure.
Oh, that's really okay. Yeah, I was just curious. Yeah, I'll have to check that out. And I've seen that particular book, and I haven't read it. But wow, that sounds really interesting about the situation you described. And then I know Trish also introduced me to the books by Brian Weiss, like The Many Lives, Many Masters. And his books were just riveting because there's so much evidence, proof, if those are the words that you want to use, that this occurs. And I thought it was helpful for grief healing because you'd be like, wow, this really happened. This makes me feel better. And Trish, can you tell the people kind of like how like a past life regression might work? Because I know you've actually done that with people. And I know you did an average Joe example. Maybe you could tell us about that.
Sure. Yeah, I've been doing past life regression with my clients pretty much since I started doing this work of energy healing and all of what I do. So when you experience a past life regression, you essentially go into a very deep meditative state, and your subconscious, your higher self, retains all memory through space and time, and we access those memories to help with this life now. And so usually people, when they come to get a past life regression, have something going on in their life that they'd like healing with, and oftentimes it's a last resort, like this hasn't worked, oh, what the heck, I'll try past life regression.
Oh, sure.
And, it's just common, and the results are oftentimes, startling even for me in a very good way. The average Joe example that you mentioned is in an article from Nature's Pathways, and I have a link on my website to that. definitely an interesting article worth reading. In any case, this gentleman came in to write an article about past life regression and had no real reason for doing a past life regression. Short story is that he went to a past life, started out, he was on a horse, his right arm was starting to go numb, shoulder hurt, he was being chased by 3 men, he didn't know why, he was Native American, the people chasing him were white, and shortly after that, he dies, goes to the light. And so he comes back from that, I bring him out of his meditative state, and we discuss it, and it turned out that initially he's like, I don't know why I went to that. That was weird. and I just asked him, I said, have you ever had nightmares? Or he goes, oh, yeah, since I was a child, I would have night terrors. I'd wake up, I'd be in a sweat. I was being chased. And I thought, okay, because a lot of times our past lives will come through in nightmares or in dreams.
Oh.
We call it a bleed through.
Okay.
The other thing is, when he did that session, his right arm had been going numb and his shoulder hurt and everything like that. And he talked about how in this lifetime, in his shoulder, in that same spot, he's had a knot there ever since he can remember. And no massage therapist, no matter how good, how strong the hands, anything like that, nobody's ever been able to remove that knot in his shoulder. But as we had done the session, it started to loosen up and let go. And he found that interesting. So he came back because we needed to get the understanding, like what led up to him getting shot in the back. He was shot in the back in that lifetime by these 3 men who were chasing him. And it turned out that in that particular lifetime, his mom was Native American and his dad was white. And his dad also had a white wife. And so at that time, when he got shot, his mother was in the process of dying. So he went to his stepbrother, his white stepbrother from the other mother, and asked where their shared father was. And I don't know if he didn't know or what it was, but he didn't give any information about where the father was. My client in that lifetime turned around, started walking away, and that's when he got shot in the back. And shortly after died. So it stayed with him because, my perception is it stayed with him because it was such an emotional thing. His mother's dying. All he wanted to do was bring his dad to see her. Now he can't even get back to his mother, and here he is dying. Mm-hmm. What was fascinating in that case is, his shoulder resolved, and he doesn't have pain there, and his right arm is fine, and he doesn't have night terrors anymore. Also, when he was younger, like in his early 20s, he had a job working with multiracial kids, and it was so natural for him. He was completely colorblind, really. I'm not physically colorblind, but emotionally, and that was the gift of the bleed through from that lifetime. And the pain was the bad part of the bleed through, but the bad stuff resolved, and he still has all the good stuff.
Wow,
and,
that's awesome.
Yeah. And then I've done other past life regressions where people recognize the people in the past life. They recognize those souls as people who are in their life now. In 2014.
Yeah, because you kind of mentioned sometimes we reincarnate with our own soul group. Is that the term you used?
Yeah, many. I don't talk a lot about soul groups, but yeah, that's generally accurate. That people reincarnate with people that they've already known.
And well, you kind of knew that you had a natural gift in this area also, because when you were younger, did you also have like bleed through, if that's like how you describe it, like where you would imagine past lives or something like that?
Yeah, well, what happened is I was in international business in corporate America, and I was traveling overseas, and a lot of times I'd have like past life, automatic past life recall when I'd be somewhere. And it was rather unsettling, and that's how I came across that book that I recommended just a little while ago.
Oh, sure, because perhaps when it happened, you didn't really know what was happening, and that's how you figured it out. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, because there's not a lot of people that you can, at that time, that was about,
Sure.
that was almost 20 years ago, nobody was
Sure.
really talking about it. But now it's a lot more commonly talked about. There are a couple other authors that are interesting. Michael Newton, Newton. He's got some interesting material, and Brian Weiss and Henry Leo Bolduc, Bolduc, and then Dolores Cannon, Dolores Cannon. They're all past life regressionists who are pretty interesting, have some interesting materials.
And who was the third person you said? I didn't catch that person's name. You said Newton, Brian Weiss, Dolores Cannon, and...
Oh, Henry Leo Bolduc, Bolduc. And I trained with him. Gosh, he was the first person I trained with. I was already doing past life regressions, but I had the opportunity to train with him a little bit. And he'd been doing past life regression since he was a teenager. And at that time he had white hair, so he was a good one to learn from. A lot of experience.
And then I actually, because I know Trish can't really share too many stories because of patient confidentiality, I actually went to Trish for a past life regression recently, so I can share my story. I just went, I believed in past life regression just from talking to Trish and reading a lot of these books she had just said, because she had recommended them to me as well, and they're on her site. In my past life regression, I went in because I actually had pain in my shoulder, and I thought, and I've had it like for 5 years. I thought, well, I'm going to see if this helps. So it was almost like the last resort, how you had described that earlier. But my experience was really kind of fun. Because Trish explains it, it wasn't scary. She explains it like, what comes through will be what you need to know right now. So my experience, Trish, takes you through a guided visualization, and a whole group did this so we could kind of compare our stories afterwards. And mine, it was funny, just randomly. It was the year 1861. It was in Somerville, wherever the heck that would be, but that's what came up. And actually, I was a man, and and my happiest memory, which Trish takes you to, was I was getting married, and I could visualize my wife with long, pretty blonde braids, like long blonde hair and pretty braids. And then later, Trish takes you to, how did you pass away or how did you die? And then in my situation, I think, I don't know if I got shot or something happened, but I could see myself my spirit going up to the sky. But the theory of my story was, not theory, but the reason is my wife at the time, because I died, I couldn't get back to her, and I think I was probably only in my 30s. So it was made me sad that I couldn't get back to her. But then my wife turned out in this life to be my best friend in kindergarten. So I think in this life we were so little, we were able to get back to each other right away. So it was just such a happy story to feel that love, and when you're little kids, how little kids hang over each other and are always so happy. So it was just really a happy experience. And my shoulder pain, I don't know if it's related or not, but is much better because, something I don't know if I got shot in my shoulder or something happened with my shoulder. I can't remember. That part was kind of fuzzy, but it seemed like something happened on that side of my body. Maybe it was a heart attack. I don't know. So it was just an awesome experience. So I welcome or encourage people, if this is a new concept to you, maybe just give it a try because it might help with your grief healing to give you comfort that, wow, our souls really do come back life after life. Our loved one really could be up in heaven, and we could reincarnate with them again. So it's just really an interesting concept. It's another tool you can put in, let's say, your arsenal to use for grief healing. So, yeah, my experience was awesome. But again, I believed in it. I had no real reason to do it except, oh, my shoulder hurt. But it was awesome. And so anyhow,
Well,
that was my experience.
thanks for sharing that, Chelsea. Yeah, that is awesome. And, I think one of the other things you did is you went in without expectation, You didn't come in wondering about your relationship with your friend when you were a little girl, but that's what came up because you were open to what Spirit felt was most important for you at this time. And that's a really important part of even receiving signs, is being open to what's appropriate from their point of view, from Spirit's point of view, because a lot of times they can see things more clearly than we can when we're in physical form.
Sure.
And I wanted to mention that past life regression is fairly new, a fairly new type of work to get help with. But Oprah has had Brian Weiss on, and Brian Weiss even did some work with Dr. Oz, and so you can find those on her website, and I have links to that also on my website.
Yeah, and I think that just shows how much more mainstream, how much more accepted this is. And then, too, in the book that was really quite popular about a year ago, Dying to Be Me, by the lady's last name is Morjani, Anita Morjani. In the back of her book, Dr. Wayne Dyer also goes through a past life regression, so that's all. The whole story is in there of exactly what happened in his regression. So that's just another example of how more mainstream this technique is, which I think is awesome, just to give people more help to make them feel better. So
yeah, it helps you connect with those souls, and it helps you get those insights. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Sometimes you can't do this all the time, but sometimes it's good to just think of having one foot over in spirit world and one foot over here in the physical world, and then walking along in life that way. And if you walk along in life that way with the idea that half of you is in spirit world and half of you is in the physical world, it makes it easier to stay open to what Spirit's moving you to do, or the messages that Spirit is sending you. And when I say Spirit, I mean not only our loved ones who've crossed, but also Creator and the angels, our teachers and guides. And I also mean, of course, our loved ones who've crossed over. Another way to connect with our loved ones who've crossed over is to think of it as talking on a cell phone. I meant to mention this earlier. It's kind of important. You know how when we're on a cell phone, if one of us is talking, we can't hear the other one, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so sometimes it can be that simple, talking on a cell phone. And so if a person keeps that in mind, if they want to connect with their loved one, and remember that sometimes we need to become quiet so that we can hear them talking from their side.
Sure. Right, gotcha.
And while they don't have a cell phone in heaven, you can think of it that way.
Sure, like a easy way to understand that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And one other area Trish works in, and I know we're kind of getting towards the end of our time, but we haven't had any speakers talk about this, so maybe if you could just give us maybe a 5-minute lesson, Trish. Trish is very good, adept at communicating with angels as well. Is there anything you can tell us lay people that would help us communicate with our angels, or I know you say, angels always want a job to do. Any little nuggets of wisdom you could give us about our angels?
Sure. Yeah, that's actually something one of my teachers had told me. She said, there's a lot of angels out there, and some of them don't have jobs, and you know how that feels. So just feel free to give those angels a job. And I'm going to refer again to Edgar Casey and material people have written about Edgar Casey, and he talks about, you can command the angels. Of course, you can ask for the angels for help. Basically, they can help you as long as it's aligned with your divine life purpose and it's the good of all. So with that in mind, right, you can always ask the angels to help you. You can ask them to go ahead of you. And you may actually, the more you communicate with angels and just kind of talk to them in your head, think of them as messengers between you and Creator and from Creator to you. So angels, in my understanding of angels have never been on the planet. I might think of my loved ones who've crossed over as a guardian angel. However, in truth, they've been in human form, so they might become an ascended master. But, if they became wildly, enlightened. But for me, angels are beings of light that have never been in a human incarnation. So when people see them, I was talking to someone who sees them as striations of energy. Mm-hmm. I see them as balls of light. And there are different angels who help with different things. Archangel Raphael is the angel known best for healing. Archangel Michael is the angel known best for difficult situations. Many police officers have Archangel Michael around, in a pendant. He's known as a protector. Mm-hmm. And, right, there's lots of angels out there. Most everyone has a couple of guardian angels. And the guardian angels will help you. It's always good to ask for the help because sometimes they can intervene even if we don't ask for help, but they can always intervene if we do ask for help. So just keep that in mind.
Okay. Oh, sure.
Mm-hmm.
They can give them permission because we have our own free will, right? So that's why it's best to ask for help.
Well, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's best to ask for help. That's part of the beauty of being human. We have our own free will.
Oh, right. To our detriment or not. Very good. Yeah, so Trish, if you're interested too, can help you learn more about the whole realm of angels because he actually has studied with Doreen Virtue as well in that area. So, which is nice that she has so much knowledge in that area. So last question, Trish, because we're towards the end of time. As far as grief healing in general, what would just be the one message that you want people to take home? Like, what do you think is the most important thing they need to know?
Oh, that's a really good question, Chelsea. As you ask that question, I'm quickly running through my Rolodex of experiences and what seemed to be the most helpful to people. And first, if I can give more than just one message.
Sure, absolutely.
The first one would be that love continues, so the connection remains, and that's truth. Love continues. The connection is eternal. 2, as deep as the sorrow goes, that is as high as the joy can go. And 3, each person has their own process. Grief is an emotion. Emotions come and they go, and they're complicated, and emotions can't be experienced exactly the same by every person. And even if you describe it, those words don't really reflect exactly, specifically the feeling that you have in your body and your emotions. So just remembering that everybody's experience of grief is unique, and there will be moments of joy and happiness for the person who's crossed over and is in the light, and they're happy and they're joyful. And then there will be those moments of longing and missing them. And then 4th, people are, because love is eternal, we are reunited.
Yeah, and
You can always reach them.
that's such a lovely thought, comforting thought that we can be reunited. Love is eternal. And I just love how you say, as deep as our sorrow goes, that is as high as our joy can go. So that's a lovely way to end the call. And again, it was our pleasure to have Trish on the call. And if you want more information about Trish, certainly visit her website, which is patriciampoole.com. And she also has a newsletter you can sign up for to learn more about the healing modalities that are available both to heal grief and everyday problems that you're experiencing in your life. So thanks again, Trish, for your time today. We very much appreciate it.
You're welcome, Chelsea. And hey, I'm just thinking about my website. I didn't spell my first name, and there's different ways to spell it. So.
Oh, yes. Send it. Yeah, tell us so we have it right.
Yes. Yeah, sorry about that. It's PATRICIA, M as in Mary, Poole, POOLE.com.
Awesome. And then in the information we send you out about the calls as well, you'll see Trish's name and stuff too, so you'll have it that way as well. And again, thanks, Trish. We appreciate your time, and I think you really opened us up, well, me again, and all the listeners too. There's other healing modalities that we could check out if we're interested in, because there's lots of options. So thanks again.
Thank you, Chelsea. Thanks for this opportunity to share with all your listeners.
And take care, everyone.